Last time when I was here, I had a plan, as planners do, and brought a lot of boards, talked a lot about park work we're doing and things like that. And so today I pictured this more as a conversation. I'll talk about a few things that we're working on in the planning office and with our town zoning map in the background in order to point things out or whatever. And then I thought we'd just have a conversation. Feel free to ask me any questions you have. I have a notebook and a pen, thanks to the ladies here. And so if there's a question I can't answer, I'd love to take down the question and your name and your contact information, get any answers to questions that you might have if I can't answer them. So today, like I said, I'm picturing this more as kind of a conversation with people who are here. So again, I'm just going to try to go over some basics of the planning department and my job, if I can figure out how to summarize that, and some things we're working on, and maybe that will bring up some questions that you don't already have in your mind, and then we can talk about questions you might already have, or comments, or anything like that. So, the Planning and Economic Development Director works for the Planning Board, but I also work for the town administrator, the town manager, who of course works at the direction of the Board of Selectmen. So my job has two parts, and I'd say it's about a 1/3 planning board, 2/3 town manager kind of job. As you know, the town has what's called the Zoning Bylaw. I call it our Bible, and it's a book that residents have voted of these zoning districts you see here. Most of the town, as you can see, over almost 92% is rural residential. And then these other districts, suburban residential, industrial, office light industrial, and village. And the residents have voted over the years since 1955, that was our first bylaw here, August 25th, 1955, about what uses you can have in these districts, what uses you can't, different sizes, and all the little details of things you can do and not do in Sutton. Every town, just about every town in the Commonwealth, has their own zoning bylaw, and the unfortunate engineers, surveyors, and professionals that need to work in every town have quite the job of going from town to town and having to learn how it's different in every town. There are some things that are the same by state law, but our zoning bylaw is very unique to what residents here have voted over the years. They want things to be like here. So when I work for the planning board, it's primarily my job to receive applications from developers, from individual homeowners, and the professionals they work with, attorneys, engineers, land surveyors, for uses that our regulation says you can do in the town of Sutton. And some you can do as of right, like you can build, I'm trying to think what you can do as of right. There's not a lot you can do, just carte blanche. But say in the the red district, for a long time, until a few years ago, and it still might be the same, you could build a restaurant in the business district. But you can't just walk in and build it. There's still a process. You have to come into the town, you have to file certain documents and plans, and you have to go through a public hearing where anybody that's within 300 feet of your property gets a notice. The notice goes in the local newspaper, so we post the agenda and send out notes, and anybody and everybody can come in and see your plans and have their say. And then you go through that whole process, and then the planning board listens to what everybody says, and they either deny the use, or they approve the use, or what they usually do is approve the use with a lot of conditions to make sure that over time you stay in compliance with the bylaws, and so that's what they do. So it's my job to take that application and take the bylaw and compare the two, basically, and to write up a review and say your plan doesn't meet the regulations in this way, it does meet it in this way, and to let developers know as they come in, here's kind of where the town is right now. We're not loving your use, we've had a lot of issues with your use, so even though this bylaw says you can do it, you might want to think about these changes or these things. So And some developers listen to that and some developers don't. But it's my job to try to express to them not only what's in the book and how they meet it or don't meet it, but kind of what the public's been saying lately about different things. So it's my job to write bylaws when the board thinks we need to do something different. Lately, we had a whole bunch of issues up in this orange area with a very big project with some blasting. And we were very frustrated as a board and a staff that we didn't have anything in the book that let us regulate a lot of that locally. So the board had me not write a new bylaw, but take one of our existing bylaws and write changes to it. So that can't happen again. So if somebody wants to do that kind of earthwork, in the least, they can't do any of that without notifying residents first, without getting information out to people, without having a set of really detailed plans, without going through a public hearing process with the board. So that's an example of one of the things the board has me do. So like that particular change to our earth removal bylaw, I just wrote a draft of that. The board saw it Monday night. It went out to our building commissioner, to our fire department, to our lead assessor. So they're all professionals who can have input to it immediately. And then even though this kind of bylaw doesn't have to go to a public hearing, we're going to have a public hearing because we want the public to see the bylaw too, and for them to tell us if they think something's missing or something could be done better, or ask questions. Because often, whether it's on a project or whether it's on a bylaw, people asking questions and having input almost always makes the project better, makes the bylaw better, because I'm one person and the board members are 6 people, and we don't think of everything. We're just people. So that's why we like to have that public process. So again, planning board is, here's the rules, here's the project, you compare it, tell us how it meets it and doesn't, give them a little feedback on where the public's going, and when something's not working well, we write bylaws or adjust them to fix it, or when a new use comes into town, like we haven't had the issue here yet, but like a bed and Airbnb. A lot of towns are doing regulations to regulate if people can rent their house out for Airbnb, and if they can, how do they do that, and blah, blah, blah. So when new uses come up that we couldn't have seen coming in 1955, it's the planning board's job, and they make it my job, basically, to check with other towns, see if they already have regulations, to really be in touch with our regional planning agency, and to help them write bylaws, to help us regulate things and make sure things stay the way we want it at the moment. Because as you all know, the way you wanted it in 1950, you may want some different things in 1990 and 2022. So the bylaw is an evolving document. I've been here over 22 years, and I think there's only 2 years where we didn't do changes to the zoning bylaw. Only 2 years. So whereas the prior town I worked in, I worked for them for 12 years, and we probably changed the bylaw 7 of the 12 years. So we still changed it, but not as often. It wasn't as living a document as ours is here in Sutton. So that's the majority of what I do with the planning board. There's some other stuff that I'm sure Wally, who's on the planning board, could go, I forgot this, but that's the heart of what I do with the planning board. What I do for the board, the town manager, or what he lets me do, which is kind of nice, lets me run with things, is a whole bunch of other stuff. So as you also probably know, we have what's called a master plan in the town of Sutton. It's a 25-year document. It's a big public process, happens about every 20 years or 23 years, and people are invited to public meetings, and they say, what's your general idea of what you think the town should look like? What kind of capital expenditures should we make, like on schools and police departments and things like that? What kind of land use should we do here? Should we have, an outdoor performance venue? Should we allow, 10-story buildings? Those kind of things. And there's 7 areas in every master plan, from land use to capital planning to climate change to that. everybody talks about, and you form broad general goals. It's kind of like the umbrella plan. Not a lot of details, but broad general goals. And at the end of the master plan are things that the community who participates in the master plan process decides they should kind of work on. So ideally you take those broad goals and they work down into your zoning bylaw or into your fire regulations or into all of the actual regulations in a town. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. Sometimes you try to do something that's in the master plan and everything has to be, changes have to be made on town meeting floor, and town meeting says, where did that idea come from? We're not doing that. So you're like, all you can do is, all right, well, we tried that. It was not well received, so we're not doing that now. So we have this big master plan, and in it are things like, we need more playgrounds, or we need more trails, or we need, and these are things that are just in my realm. There's always, we need new fire trucks, and that's the fire chief stuff, you know, or we need better roads, and that's the highway super stuff. But in the world of planning, I kind of get everything else that anybody else doesn't get. So the highway super helps me with park stuff, but I apply for those grants, work with the residents to do those plans, and carry out those programs with his assistance. We have a grant right now that we just applied for. It's called the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Grant. It's to help you deal with the effects of weather. We're getting bigger storms more frequently now, and it's wreaking havoc with some things. We had a section of Putnam Hill Road wash out a number of years ago, really near to the water supply in Manchog. We had some flooding last year in the Manchog Mills, where all the businesses on the bottom floor had some level of damage, amounted to well over $70,000 worth of lost product and damages, and downtime for those businesses. So this grant that we reached out for and received will allow us to work with an engineer who will go down in the village, that watershed that starts at Darkbrook up near Blackstone National and goes all the way down through the village. And as you know, as a textile mill village and 3 main mills, there was underground water sluiceways and stuff that connected the mills. So not only is there the catch basins and the storm pipes underground for regular modern drainage, but there's all of these weird conduits underground from the old mills. And then you have the natural waterways, the Mumford River that runs through there, Dark Brook, and all the other waterways. And those all work or don't work together to cause the flooding issues that we see. And those surface usually when you have a major storm event. So this grant will allow us to work with a firm that are professionals in hydrogeology and hydrology. They sound the same, but they're not. I'm learning this. Who'll go out in the field and they'll research all of this. They'll climb in the pipes, they'll look at the plans, they'll do all of this stuff, and they'll see where it's not, and they'll look at the photographs from the flooding and talk to, you know, the business owners and residents who've been in the area for decades. And they'll produce a plan that says, here's your hot spots, here's where you've got issues, blah, 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 and here's some things you can do. And things from fixing a pipe to creating a park that with no pervious, with no pavement, that if a flooding happens, it can overflow into the park, and when it's not flooded, it can be a beautiful place to walk and view historic signs or sit or whatever. So very creative ideas. So when we're done with this grant, that plan will serve as a launch for other projects and other grant applications. So that's like one of the things the town manager allows me to do that satisfies a goal in the master plan. That's not really planning board directed, but that serves the community and the goals they've placed in the master plan. So for instance, since February I filed 4 grant applications. Working with the sewer superintendent, I filed a $3.6 million grant application with the state for sewer improvements in Wilkinsonville, and that is a $5 million plus project, but 3.6 we asked for in funds. So again, that goes back to the master plan. Residents said we need more reliable infrastructure. We have asbestos clay pipes in sections of Wilkinsonville. If you know anything about asbestos and clay, over time they dry out and they get brittle, and we've had 2 breaks in that line. And all of the sewer from all the neighborhoods in northeast Sutton, from any businesses right at the intersection of Boston Road and Route 146, from the villas at Pleasant Valley, from Galaxy Development where the grocery store is, all of that, 200,000 gallons a day, minimum, goes through that length of pipe. We need to fix the length of pipe. So, and while we're doing that, again, thinking about climate and storms going forward, we're gonna move the pump station further from the Blackstone River and put it at a location where in bad weather, in tough times, the sewer department can get to it easier and faster if need be, for repairs, for whatever. So that was that grant. And again, it went all the way back to the goals the residents set about making sure we have a reliable, safe infrastructure. So that was one of the grants. The next grant was for a $440,000 project, $70,000 grant, something like that, for new playground fencing and stuff at American Legion Park in the village of Manchog. So new fencing for the softball field, new playground equipment, new picnic tables, shade structures, trees, new pervious parking lot. So looks like pavement, but the water percolates through it again. Climate change and making sure we maintain things the way they are now. So that goes back to residents saying, we need more recreation, we need recreation that's easier to maintain, because as all of us know, it's no good if it's not easier to maintain, and if you don't have a plan from the beginning to maintain it. So while we're doing this, I'm working with the highway superintendent to make sure he has adequate staffing to maintain these facilities, because that's often missing in a municipal plan. They're like, this is so pretty, let's do it, and how are we maintaining that for the next 50 years? So we're working really hard to make sure we're all set in there, and that either the staff we have can be restructured to handle it, or we add staff to make sure that's all set. The third grant was the municipal vulnerability grant that I described, and then the fourth grant was for the little neighborhood park right here, Van Dyke Park. Van Dyke Park, as you know, basketball court gets just a ton of use. As I was standing today, I met with the state rep, not the state rep like politician, the state representative of the grant program, because they have to do a site visit before they make their decisions. And as we were standing there, a gentleman from Georgia, or at least that's what his truck said, came pulling in like he knew exactly where he was going, did pull off the parking lot right up against the basketball court, which I have to work on that, hopped out with his basketball and started playing, and she's like, all right, you just paid him to and I said, I did not pay him. I said if I paid him, he wouldn't have pulled off the pavement to get up to the basketball court. So it's used by the neighborhood in particular. But as you know, over the years, we had a donation of telephone poles and had swings hung from those, and those degraded over time, and we had to take those down because they were not safe. The community in this area, they donated the play structure that's down there. It's now not to code, the underneath beams are degrading, it's just not safe. So we have a little group in town, it's called Sutton Recreational Resources. It's moms and grandmothers, basically, from Wilkinsonville, who wanted to work with the town to clean up Unity Park. I don't know if you've been down there and seen the new playground at Unity Park, but that's why they formed this little nonprofit, and they asked us, will you work with us to file a grant and blah, 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 because the town has to be the grant applicant for these grants. And so we started working with them, and they said that was so awesome, it was such a good reward, can we work on another playground? And what they do is the core group works with me, and we reach out to the area we're working in, and we get new moms, new dads, and grandparents, and one of the core members has no kids or grandkids. They just love seeing these things happen and adding to the community. And it's not just about playgrounds. Right now we're focused on playgrounds, but it's any recreational project, basically. So at Shaw Farm, we have all the woodland trails and the paths around the field. So those are the kind of projects they would work on too. They would work on active projects like, tennis court development if we needed tennis courts. So anything related to kind of open space and recreation, they work with me now to help me out because there's a lot of balls in the air in our office, and it's just me and my assistant Tammy, who works 20 hours. So, so that was the next grant we applied for, was this little baby one. And I'm actually just about to, I'm told, I am about to, this one came right from the town manager, I've taken back over our green community program in Sutton. If you noticed, we have solar panels on a lot of town buildings. I applied way back in, I don't know, it was 11 years ago, I think, 2011, for us to become a green community. And I had to show the state that we were steadily reducing our power use. So that was working with every department to reduce their power needs, switch out certain vehicles, certain kinds of heaters and furnaces and light fixtures, and within the first 3 years, we reduced overall town consumption by over 20%. So, and to entice you to do that, the state offers you this grant program that helps you pay for some of these projects, and gives you a little bit of a reward, basically. So I did the program for 2 or 3 years, then we hired a green community grant manager with a grant, and paid her for 2 years with that, and then she stayed as a consultant for a number of years. Now it's back to me. So I'm working right now for the next grant. We've got some LED lighting we need to finish at the school, and the highway department the fire department gets all the bells and whistles, and the police department. So the highway department tends to get the short end of the stick a little bit. So they actually have a building, as you know, if you've ever been down there on Pleasant Valley Road, it's very old, it's in tough shape, broken windows, you name it. They've been very creative. They have not only their normal heating system, but they have a used oil burner system that they concocted over the years to just help with heating and costs. But it's their turn. So Rise Energy we work with National Grid and Eversource. They're looking at a weatherization program for the highway department to maybe replace some of those broken windows. And again, we'll file a grant to just pay for this because we work to maintain our status as a green community. So my job in this case is to maintain all the stuff we need to maintain to make sure we still qualify as a green community. That's, getting all the energy bills from all the departments, putting it into the database, adding it up, making sure we submit it and it meets all the standards, but then filing the grant, working with these vendors, filing the grant, and then making sure I work with the installers and make sure everything gets done, and then filing a report saying what we did. So, because you can't ask for more money if you don't finish using the last money and do it well. So that's like the next grant. So a lot of my time when I'm not working for the planning board is spent filing grants, trying to meet goals that residents have set through the master plan process. So we have stuff going on literally everywhere. And so for the planning board down here, actually, I don't even know what the exit is anymore. Exit 8 or 9 now. The first one in Uxbridge Douglas, where the Pine Sand and Stone is, and the Dunkin' Donuts, and right there at that exit on the east side. In terms of planning board stuff, we have, I don't even know how big it is now, Wally, right? 600,000 roughly? Yeah, we have 600,000 square feet of distribution getting built right now. It actually straddles all 3 town lines. It's about, what was it, like 50% in Uxbridge, 40% in Sutton, and 10% in Douglas, something like that. So not my job, thank goodness, to be in the assessors meeting where they assign tax values to everybody, but we will get our proportionate share of those taxes, just so we're clear.
It's done very easily, a third.
Yes.
Each town, regardless of how much.
You would think, but no. I'm not in on that one. But, and then just north of that, we just received closer to Oakhurst Road and Lackey Dam Road, we received and are in the hearing process on 200,000 square feet more. Only emergency access out to Oakhurst Road, main access down off Lackey Dam again with trucks directed to Route 146. But employees can come from all over. So a big part of that process is hiring our own civil engineering reviewer, hiring our own traffic reviewer, if need be, hiring our own sound reviewer, which we did in this case. We hired an acoustical engineer to look at their sound reports, make sure there's nothing hokey in there, make recommendations if they think additional sound walls or something are needed. So that's in a public hearing process down here. So again, for the planning board, it's my job to hire those engineers, those professionals, get them what they need to review, get their reports back, give it to the board, do my own review in accordance with the bylaws. So those two things are going in down here. As you all know, Commerce Park, which was a sand pit when I got here, this is all built out now. We have, oddly enough, a church right in the middle of it, where it used to be Schwan Food, nice Tony's Frozen Pizzas. We're in there. Yeah, and that's livestock now. But otherwise, we have a whole bunch of great businesses in here, very diversified. So we have Koopman Lumber, we have Source International that makes chairs for high-end applications, like when you walk into like a Fallon Clinic, so to speak, all the chairs you see, big contracts like that, schmancy offices. You go into like a high-end something on Wall Street offices, and all of their chairs are made by companies like Source International down in the park. So yeah, they donated some chairs to the town, and the chairs they donated, they're very nice chairs, but they were like their low-end chairs, and they were like $500 a chair. I was like, oh my gosh. So, which was very nice of them. But so they're down there. There's a company called Interstate Gasket who works with companies like HP, printers and computers. They make these super thin gaskets that go in those computers and printers. They make medical gaskets. They make, I guess you use gaskets in a lot of different things, and they work with all those different kinds of companies down here. We have Champion Container, which is really just warehouse and distribution. You know, they buy all different kinds of containers, and they store them, process orders, and ship them back out. We have NEDT. New England Disposal Technologies does household hazardous waste intake. They also are like clean harbors. If oil is spilled out on the turnpike, their crews go up and clean that all out and make sure that environmental damage is contained. And then we have IBA, who used to be in Millbury. They work with the dairy farming industries, everything from products for feeding cows to equipment related to inoculations and things like that. They relocated from Millbury to here and expanded. And we have Prime Metals down there. Prime Metals is an international corporation. They're a conglomeration between Morgan Construction out of Worcester, Siemens, and Mitsubishi. The head of that company is actually from Japan. He flew out here for groundbreaking. And Austria are some of the other, Austria are some of the other higher ups in the company. But we have so many area residents working there. One of their point men actually graduated from BVT. It's an amazing company, well over 200 employees, and they work in the steel rolling industry. They don't actually roll steel here. They basically make these amazing, intricate parts in these $500,000 machining tools down there, and they bring in pieces of these giant machines that companies all over the world use, machine their detailed part of the job, assemble it all there, and they have these huge doors and cranes where a full tractor trailer rolls into the building. These cranes lift up the assembled thing, put it on there, they secure it, and it goes to California or wherever, or to a shipping dock to ship out to, you know, wherever, Denmark or wherever it's needed. So, and they have arms and bases all over the world. But so that's the company that's located up here. So very diversified. We love that. Frankly, it's luck. It's luck. We're very lucky that we ended up with a nice diversified number of businesses, because anybody can walk in, look at our bylaw, and go, oh, I can do this, and apply for it. And we have to accept the application, measure it against our bylaw, allow it if it's allowed and they meet the standards, or deny it if it's not. So we're very fortunate that we got a great mix of businesses here, because, you know, even though we still get taxes if a business is sitting there, not the jobs. Because the jobs, you know, enrich everything else in the area. They help us get restaurants and grocery stores, and the like. So that's kind of what's going on down here. This is fully occupied. This over here is in the hearing process or being built. There is a little bit of activity going on across the street. We have a little parcel owned by Mary Bedoin over there, about 100 acres. And it sits on top of 300 acres in Douglas, where the Pine and Dauphiné concrete operations and Pine Sand Pit is. They're moving faster with their earth removal, so now you've got parties looking at that site. So we might see something happening there in the near future, mostly in Douglas, but certainly in Sutton. Over here, we have, unfortunately, the Picard family, after being in the village for generations, they found themselves in a position where they needed to sell their land, which actually backs up to the backside of American Legion Park, and they have a holding off of Main Street near the mill. They had to sell that, so that's at least under purchase and sale, if not fully purchased at this point. So we'll have some kind of housing proposal coming in on that. I did meet with the potential buyers who I believe closed on the land. They seem okay, but you never know until they come in the door. But like Lackey Dam, like Unified, I have requested that before they file anything with the town, they should have a neighborhood meeting. Talk to the people that live in the village, hear their concerns, show them your plans, have that conversation, and work those comments into your plans, and then file with the town, because it makes a better project. So we'll see if they follow that advice. So this is the area from here down where that MVP project will be looking at all the hydrology and trying to stop the flooding that's been going on in these areas. So that's kind of what's going down there. You have a new interior design company down here. It's called, come on, Wally. It's called, I think, District 5.
Yeah.
Because the lady grew up in Worcester, and they used to have districts for school districts in Worcester, and I believe that's why it's called District 5. So it's where Rebecca Locouture used to have her interior design. This lady's in the exact same building doing the exact same thing. So that just opened down there, so if you get a chance, I think she's open now. If not, her grand opening is soon. So, you know, it's got, you know, home goods and things. So, you know, check that out if you get a chance. That's going on over here. Let me see, Manshog, not too much going on in the Manshog area off Duval Road. There's a parcel right here that was proposed for 30 single-family house lots with 1 in Sutton, but all the traffic will come out to Duval Road. So the board just got done approving that with about 57 conditions. And so we went through all the engineering, and that developer actually was very good about working with the town, and even though there was no backup in their traffic studies, they are giving us thousands of dollars basically to improve the intersection at Manshog Road and Torrey Road, at Mumford and Duval, which they would have had to do that anyways, and at Main Street and Mumford as well. So they seem pretty responsive. And the developer has actually a very good reputation, and they're not one of those big guys. They're more of a little guy developer. So that's happening down here. Along Central Turnpike, we don't have really anything going on. If you haven't visited Shaw Farm, when you get a chance in the fall when the weather actually drops below 90-something degrees, there's trails all throughout the woodlands. You can park right across from Cater's Pond. There's a little parking area, and right off Shaw Lane there's a little parking area, and there's signage, and all the trails are marked. You can pick up a trail brochure. There's a little holder. You can pick up the trail, or if you're very savvy, you can zap the QR code and the map will come up on your phone. So, and you can walk the trails out there. We have a trail steward, Howard Bottomley, who lives on Putnam Hill Road. He maintains a lot of those trails. He won't let us pay him, because his theory, good theory, is if we pay him, then he has to show up. Well, he shows up 3 days a week, rain or shine, injuries or not anyways, but we'll shortly be doing an adopt a trail program there, because he's getting up there and getting a little tired. So shortly we'll be doing an adopt a trail program out there, and hopefully we'll have some individuals and families in town who want to adopt and help us maintain those trails. So this is 137 acres. We've got open fields. You'll often see photographers doing work up there. You'll see plane enthusiasts, miniature plane enthusiasts are flying up there all the time. There's some drone people that fly up there. Our cross-country team practices there, and they have their meets there. They have for a very long time. So we have a partnership with the school in terms of mowing the edges of the field. And then every year, the field mowing, like the big field mowing, the town puts out a contract. It's usually a 3 to 5 year contract to make sure those fields are mowed and maintained. So we're working with Whittier Farms, I think, on this contract. They mow them, and they're actually working with us some special equipment. We've got a lot of vines and stuff overgrowing the fields, so you'll see if you go up there, there's rough edges right now because they're cutting back. They're pulling back those vines and stuff and opening the edges of the fields back up. So it'll take time for that to look pretty again, but it's all part of the renovation. So for the short time, this is planned to stay just like it is for the time being. There aren't any restrictions on what you can use this property for, but it's a really nice open space. And that I know of, no plans in the immediate future to change that. So the school complex, as you know, recent renovations, everything pretty much status quo there for the time being. The west side of town, 8 lots in this area, really nothing going on over there. Lake Singletary, we have Marion's Camp, great little, our only public access beach in town, $25 a year for a pass to play in the water there. If you're from out of town, it's $50. And there's a canoe launch there, there's trails in the woods there, there's trails along the lakeside there. We hope to continue to work. There's a pavilion and a field up above it, about 3 acres. We work every year with the highway department to slowly work rocks out of there with the hope of having a much smoother surface in the near future so we can do concerts right there. Because we have well over 65 parking spaces. It'd be nice to have, because there's full electricity to the pavilion. We're working on a septic design so we can have public bathrooms there soon instead of porta potties. And we do have a well that was used when this was the Campfire Girl Camp for 8 years. Talking to the state about bringing that back online and what we'll have to do for regulation. So we have water and sewer at that location. But again, meant to stay as that camp use, not be heavily built up, be a natural open space spot. And talking more and more about having it open more hours so people have more access. So, not a lot else going on around Singletary. There's this large parcel, used to be Star of the East Farm. There's been various proposals for this, but right now it's very, very quiet. So nothing currently, no permits active or anything still approved here. So, Burbank and Sibley Road, we've had some traffic issues there because it's so tight. So we'll be doing some studies on, actually here. So we'll be doing some studies on that to see what we can do to improve traffic safety there. So that's what's going on up there. King Farm is actually starting through what's called the APR program, Agricultural Preservation Restriction, where the state works with the town to permanently preserve the parcel and block it from development. So starting to work through. Glenn King, who used to work for the town, owns a smaller piece here. His parcel was locked down last year, I think. And Sharon Kent, his sister, who owns the balance of the farm, has started through the program to lock down the rest of the farm. So hopefully that'll move forward. You'll see some town meeting articles related to that on near future town meetings. So, and then Route 146. A lot of Route 146 was built out kind of hodgepodge in the 60s and 70s. So we do a lot of redevelopment. The issue on 146 is, other than at the intersection with Boston Road, there's no water and sewer up and down 146. So that's what is kind of a constraint on development out here. So you really can, and from this point where Cold Spring Brook crosses across Route 146, which is just kind of where Pleasant, if you're looking at the Unibank, the new Unibank in front of the grocery store, just south of that Unibank is where Cold Spring Brook crosses across the highway. From that point to Millbury, it's a limited access highway. You can have curb cuts onto the road from that point south, you may not have a curb cut anywhere onto the road. So that's why you don't see any development anywhere here. A lot of this is owned by the state and the state park system, but you also can't have a driveway onto Route 146 because it's federal and state funded and it's locked down. All the way to the Rhode Island line, actually. So you can only develop around the interchanges, basically, from this point south. So this is mainly redevelopment, new tenants, things like that. Not a lot of big new stuff. We do have a developer thinking about some land up here if he can get water and sewer from Millbury for some potential housing right along the highway. So maybe some condos or apartments or something. But again, that won't go anywhere unless he can pull water and sewer from Millbury because we don't have water and sewer in that area. All right, and then you have one phase left to develop on the grocery store project. That's that big open pad that was supposed to be a Lowe's, and Lowe's isn't building anything new. So they're always working with all the partners they work with to try to find tenanting. One of the big things is they need to see a certain median income within so many feet and or critical mass, so a certain number of people who live or work within a certain distance of a site to attract different kinds of clients. So when I talk about how workers drive restaurants and stuff, the more workers you have in town, the more pool of businesses that are then interested in putting certain kinds of uses like restaurants or the like in your area. And all they do is literally draw a circle and see how much population there, see what the median income is, and so, you know, growing workers helps grow those other businesses as well. As you know, 92% of the town is rural residential. The minimum lot size now is 80,000 square feet, just shy of 2 acres. It tends to drive housing costs up. It's, you know, but it also maintains a certain, you know, feeling as well. So there's a trade-off, though. So we did a housing needs study. One of the things I actually do for the planning board and the town manager did a housing needs study. Survey went out to all the households in town, and people provided a bunch of input. We had some public meetings, and what we learned in that study is that as much as 25% of the people who currently live in town are what's called housing strapped. They're paying well over 25% of their income just for housing costs. And there's a certain percentage, much smaller thankfully in Sutton, that is paying over 50% of their income in housing costs. So there's definitely a whole contingent of our aging population here in Sutton who are trying to downsize from very big homes and have no housing type to go to that's even reasonably priced within our community. So those are some of the things when a developer comes in and says, I'd like to do a project, that we'll talk to them about. Well, this housing needs study shows we could use housing for young professionals to work in businesses in this area, for seniors who are downsizing, you know, and thinking about income categories too. So, you know, that's something, if this ever moved forward, where you could kind of target what's built there for that, to meet that need, and those kind of things. And then always in Sutton and with our board, we're very sensitive to the size of the structure, the massing, the architecture, because I'm sure you've seen some horrible looking housing developments and some nicer looking housing developments. And there's enough materials and products and stuff out there now, there's just no excuse for something that's just gosh awful. So that's a small consideration, but it ends up being a big one when you're looking at something that we try to keep in mind. So that third phase, who knows what will happen there. They do have a little pod right here on this knoll of land that can be residentially used, and it's on next to Woodbury Pond. So on one side of Woodbury Pond is Woodburyville Heights. It's condominiums, 4 units in a building. It's tucked back in there. You may or may not know it's there, but it's tucked back in. And then there's a little pond, which PS, so everybody's clear, was just part of Cold Spring Brook until they dammed it up to make an ice pond. And across the street there used to be an ice house. So they dammed up the river, it made it into Woodbury Pond, and they cut blocks of ice, put it in the ice house, and that was not a pond in the beginning. It was a river that got dammed up. Like Stevens Pond in Manchok. That was not a pond. That was part of the Mumford River tributaries that got dammed up and it became a pond. So that's what Woodbury Pond is from. But, so this, Woodburyville Heights is on one side, this land is on the other side of the pond. So there's some interest in that knoll for maybe some housing too, some condos or some apartments over there. Particularly because the biggest project that's drawing the most attention these days in the town is this one. So this one is unified. So this orange area here, not all of it, but everything, all of that, basically, and all of this white area. So this is industrial zoned, and that orange area actually goes over to the edge of the power lines now. Town meeting voted to move that orange line over. And then this is residentially. So nothing's really, I shouldn't say nothing's going on there. Last year town meeting approved what's called the tax increment financing plan. It's another thing I work on for the town administrator as the economic development director. When you want to encourage business, you can offer what's called tax increment financing. So you can strike a tax deal where, let me try to explain it, it's a little hard sometimes. I do this with Legos, literally. So when you have a blank piece of property like that, so you have this blank piece of property, nothing on it, it's worth X dollars, and you get that much taxes on it, whatever. So when you do tax increment financing, somebody will come in and say, hey, I want to build something. And as soon as they express their interest in buying something, believe it or not, it actually gets a little bit more value. So then it's got a little plus money here. So, and after they get the permits and build something on it, it's worth XXXXX. So tax increment financing says, you have to continue paying us this, and this little bump too is ours too. So you pay us the base value and the incremental value it has once you say, hey, we're going to use it for development. But on this part, this increased value, for 5 to 20 years, we'll make a schedule and we'll let you pay. In the first year, you don't have to pay us any taxes. In the second year, pay us 90%. And so you never lose money. You actually gain this little bit. And then you gain this just at a slower rate. And what usually happens is it's used as a tool. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Oxford or anybody that lives in Oxford. Oxford, because they do have this great link to 395, but they are really aggressive with trying to attract new businesses. So for a number of years, they were known as the 100% kings. They would give 10-year TIFs, and the first 5 years, they'd give 100% of their taxes off. It was crazy. They were aggressive. So you get a really nice company you wanted to attract, and you have to compete against other towns. So Sutton, probably 15 years ago, started using tax increment financing to get the first businesses, because nobody was interested in this industrial park. So we used tax increment financing to lure the first businesses into this park. As soon as we had the first businesses, now people know about the park, you don't need to use it anymore, or you can reduce the percentages. Same thing when Atlas Box went to build their world headquarters. They'd been such a good partner over on Providence Road, we wanted them to stay in town. So when they said, we're going to build 250,000 and maybe go to $500,000 right on 146, and again, keep all those employees here, we agreed to give them, I think it was a 39% TIF. So over 15 years, they didn't have to pay 39% of these increased taxes, and we got 71%, and increasing over the years. So by the last 5 years of the TIF, they were paying us all the increased taxes, and they were getting nothing. But what if you do this for a local business, the state is then entitled to also give them a little bump, a little tax help too. So you have to, locally you have to buy in, and then they get a little something from the state too. So we've used this tax increment financing in a number of ways over the years. So when Atlas Box bought all of this land, totals about 460 acres here, and they formed their new partnership, so they're now called Unified, with a little squared sign next to it. they partnered with a portion of the Kraft group. They're still the majority owners, Atlas Box. And I don't know, it's all private deal, so I don't know if it's 49%, 51%, or 70-30, or 10-90, I have no idea. But Atlas Box partnered with an arm, probably the Rand Whitney boxing arm of Kraft Group, to form this unified group. They bought up this property here from 3 different owners, Aggregate Industries, Worcester Sand and Gravel, and the Town of Sutton. And they came in with a plan for these 2 buildings, which are both unified buildings, and one giant building over here, about 1 million square feet. That would be one of their customers' buildings. And they showed about $500 million in capital and personal property tax investment. And town meeting approved the selectmen of negotiating a tax deal. We entered into that tax deal. And it looks like right now that tenant 1 is not on the doorstep. So we may have to renegotiate that deal, we'll see. But in any case, Atlas Box needs to move forward with their facilities. So this is the first building they will build. They rent space everywhere to store the products they make and the companies they work with all over the place, and literally everywhere in Central Mass. So they'll be able to shut down all those rental and bring all that stuff to this one facility. So they need this right away to get that going, and then they'll have to time when this one starts happening, and we'll all have to see if this one ever happens. So, but because this tenant was imminent, they started doing earthwork over here to kind of level that area out so they could meet certain schedules they had, and applied for blasting permits, which are, we can't block blasting permits as the state approves them, but they didn't listen to a lot of people, unfortunately, and created some dust issues, some noise issues, and the planning board was very frustrated at their lack of anything in the regs, as was the staff, to at least just allow that all to be reviewed and for them to be responsive to people, thus the bylaw change we talked about at the top. But so for the short time being, there'll be no more blasting in the near future. And I've directed them, though again, I don't have anything in writing to back it up, but I've directed them that they need to put down some lumen seed and vegetate out there so we don't have that sand blowing around out there and making a mess. So we'll see how that goes. We hope to restore a cooperative relationship. They did eventually have 4 months after the fact, but they did eventually have a neighborhood meeting as was requested, and answered some questions. And there's always a lot of concerns with blasting. We've done a lot of projects with blasting over the years and have been very lucky and thankful with a lot of the results. But
which one is Boston Road?
this one's fun, right? So this is Boston Road. So this is Boston Road. So see this little tiny house right here? That is that white house. It's super, super old. So you leave Cold Spring Brook Place and you take a right and you head towards Wilkinsonville, and just as you round the corner, you'll see an old white house on your right. That's this house. So I believe it's rented right now. If there's anybody in it, it's rented right now. And right behind it is Girard Pond, the sportsman pond. And the power lines, you can see these are the power lines. They come across right after that. Right where this is where the DiGaetano garage used to be for the sand pits, and where that entrance used to be. And right here is a 250-year-old gorgeous sycamore tree. Mm-hmm. So during this approval process, the board told them they had to move this. So now this will go like this. So to keep them away from the tree, at least for the short term. So that they're going to refile soon to bend the roadway. So, and it's better for this house as well, obviously, even though it's uphill. But so that's the point at Boston Road. And then this is a 1 mile roadway, and it comes over to Providence Road. And if you're on Providence Road, you're driving towards Millbury, you go past Al's Rubbish on your left-hand side, that's basically right here. So, and then the roadway will come out there. So during this 2 buildings is all they filed for. Again, they filed a traffic study, they filed an acoustical study, they filed stormwater studies. We had them go see Wilkinsonville Water District first, because obviously this is a public water supply wellhead, and there's a zone of contribution out here that dumps into these wells. You can see the line. It's a funny amoeba-shaped line right here, and it keeps going. And that has been studied and found to pull into these wells. So we want to make sure that was all set. So we went through all of that, probably 5 months of public hearings, I think. And the board approved that. At their last meeting, they approved these 2 buildings with 32 conditions, I think. Yeah, 32 conditions, including the right that they can come back at any time and make them mitigate any kind of noise or light or traffic issues. And then they have to do follow-up traffic studies up to 3 years after the project opens to make sure those numbers they submitted weren't hokey, you know, and that if there's problems, they have to mitigate them. So, so this is the biggest project going on right now. Again, who knows if and when this will ever move forward, but again, it will go back through public hearings and the like. And then we have asked them, and I don't know that it's anytime soon, to think about the residential side of their parcel, and if there's a way they might work with the town to consider innovative types of housing, like little cottage housing, and as well as some maybe condos or apartments to help seniors, young professionals, workers, but in a way that's as compliant with Sutton as it can be. Because Sutton's a really special place, even though it's very big and very diverse in all of its villages and ways you are. And this is the most dense and kind of area. It's still a really special place that you don't want to try to ruin. So time marches forward. You need what you need, but you try to do it in the best way you possibly can. So I think I touched on most of what's going on. I think
so.
I think there's a lot of different things. But you know, if there's any questions you have, anything you want to know about, I'd love to. If you could just first name.
Mary Alice.
Hi, Mary Alice.
I'm curious about whatever happened to the senior housing development on Ormsby.
Oh, see, you got the one
I
I
live
forgot.
right next door to it, so.
Nice.
I do have a
That's
little-
right here.
Yes.
So, Mary Alice is talking about 93 gorgeous cottages that we're gonna go in at the
Next
end of
door.
our stay. Yeah, they did a beautiful job on design. Waterman Design Group out of Westboro and Northboro, they do amazing designs. They plan this gorgeous community walking trails, little community
Ponds and
gardens, and
everything.
pond, everything. And the problem was that the gentleman, Randy Waterman, with decades of experience, is more of a designer. And as you know, things in the building industry have been a bit sideways for the last few years. So when he finally got everything approved and brought in building firms to start pricing the project, the numbers were nutty. And as you know, our bylaw for that kind of housing requires that you have at least 10% affordable, which I could talk for hours on how that's not necessarily actually affordable, but we're doing what we can. Which means this had a mix of 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms and 1 bedroom units, and some of the units had 1-car garages and some of the units had 2-car garages, because ideally you'd have multiple price structures. So different people, different incomes can live in the community, and it won't look totally homogeneous. So, but all of that falls into a financial formula. And if you're familiar with the ground like you are, I'm sure, it's not the easiest land out there. Not much of what's left to develop is the easiest land out there. So it's steep, it's got some ledge, it's got a lot of wetlands.
A lot of wetlands, a lot of woods.
So when builders started pricing it, the numbers just didn't work. So it sat for a long time. And then he got a bite from a builder out of Northborough. They came in to sit down with me, and he said, yeah, I love it, but I want to change all the cottages to giant 4-bedroom colonials. I'm like, no, That is not what this is about. This is over 55 housing. Under law, if we wanna count the affordable units, our bylaws can't restrict anybody from under the age of 18 from living there. And the master deed can't do that either. But it can still be marketed as an over 55, and the fact that it's all 1 and 2 bedrooms, just like Woodburyville Heights, limits the number of kids that end up living there. But if you're a grandfather or a grandmother or a couple, and God forbid anything's happened and you now have your grandchild, they could live there. But that's it.
Yeah.
The gist of this was supposed to be an over 55, small scale, cute little, not 4-bedroom colonials. We've got a lot of those. And so he didn't love that answer. And I said, it's a whole different permit. You can't even use the permit the board issued for that. And so he's like, "Meh." So then we got a new builder in, and he seemed to get it. He was awesome. He just said, you know, there were standalone units, there were duplexes, triplexes, and 4s. All different, sprinkled throughout. So it wasn't all the same thing. And he said, you know, I'd really prefer to just do 1s and 2s. So can I do 1s and 2s? And there's nothing in the regulations that says you can. I said, yeah, you just need to bring a modified plan back into an open meeting, review it with the board, show us the architecture so we know it's not 2 units that are the size of the sun, and you can do that. And it looked real good, and he hasn't been back.
I thought that property had been sold. I read the T&G and the, where the property sold, and there was like 4 different plots, $1 million something each.
Yeah, I didn't get notice that it ever closed. They had the second guy that wanted to do the 1s and 2s, got to an offer letter, and I didn't think he got past that. So, and that was probably January of this year.
I even still have that paper, because I wondered whatever happened.
Yeah, I'm happy to look at it and just see what might be up with that.
Yeah, it's an
What
old paper.
It depends on what it could be too, I'm sure you can guess. Every time a project is proposed in town, the developer, the builder, little builder, big builder, whatever, they create what's called an LLC, a limited liability corporation. So what you could have been seeing is that the parent entity transferring to an LLC. It's financing reasons, insulation from liability and different things. You'll often see a lot of property transfers and transactions that are all about financing or all about stuff like that, but I'm happy to take a look at it.
We also got a notice that they were gonna, they had put ribbons on trees that they were gonna take down.
Yep.
Never did a thing about it,
Are they still standing?
The trees, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, and
Yeah, 'cause
some of them still have ribbons on them.
Yeah, so that would have been, the town of, well, all of the state of Massachusetts has what's called the public shade tree law.
Yeah.
And what people don't understand, you can advise everybody you know, help me out here. I can't tell you how much I have this conversation. Every town roadway consists of what's called a right-of-way. So the town owns between these 2 lines. The pavement usually runs down the middle. So every single town roadway consists of the pavement and a distance either side, anywhere from 5 feet to 25 feet wide. That's for the maintenance of the roadway. So to stack snow, to put in drainage, to whatever. So a lot of people, and you'll see it, everybody does it, when you drive down the road, they think they own to here. They do not. So they put things in here, like walls and big trees and things that they shouldn't, and then we have conflicts. So you can educate everybody you know that every time they look at a road, the pavement is only a piece of the road.
Yeah.
And there's a distance either side. And so public shade tree law says, and there often are big trees in here, they're called public shade trees. And they're bushes and whatever. So public shade tree law says, if someone, and a lot of them unfortunately land right there, this line is your front property line, and the town's right-of-way line. So if you look at your deed, it'll give you the meets and bounds of this. If you look at our right-of-way deed, it'll have the meets and bounds of this. We share this line. So if you wanna take down this tree, you have to file an application. If you think this tree is blocking your view as you try to exit your driveway, and you think it should come down, you have to file an application. And right now, because of our budgets, you get to pay for it too, if we approve it. But, and you can't affect public shade trees without going through a public hearing process. Our tree warden is our highway superintendent, he's an arborist, and he holds, this is a dated Massachusetts law, but this is still how it works. Somebody wants to take down this tree, we write them a public hearing notice, they post the notice right on the tree.
Oh.
And then abutters to the property get notified of the hearing, and the hearing is held at the tree. At the tree. That's if it's,
We got the notice, but we didn't.
it's held at the tree, so everybody can look at the tree, you're right next to the tree, if you're gonna give it the death penalty, you gotta look at it in the face. So we also have what's called scenic roadways. There's 18 roadways in Sutton that are also scenic roadways. And what that's about is, those roads, again, residents, nobody in particular, but residents, before I came here, probably about 25 years ago, judged a certain number of roadways were particularly scenic because they had big, beautiful trees, or they had lovely stone walls in or on the right-of-way, the public right-of-way. So scenic roadway only regulates what is in or on the right-of-way, and it regulates only stone walls and trees. So if you live on one of these roads and you wanna build a house and you wanna cut a hole in the stone wall, you have to file and have a public hearing with the town, and the planning board regulates the scenic roadway bylaw. So you have a hearing in front of the planning board. Usually if you're affecting trees, that's also a public shade tree hearing. So instead of having the hearing at the tree in that case, it's all one hearing held at the town hall to talk about the wall and the tree. But that's all scenic roadway is about. Trees and stone walls on or inside the public roadway. If you live on a scenic roadway and you wanna cut something down in your yard, or you have a stone wall on your property, it's yours. It's which,
split the tree in half?
yeah, well, no, this,
No.
that's a hearing every time, so, yeah, every time. So that's what the scenic roadway bylaw is, and right-of-ways are about. So you can save me a lot of phone calls if you spread the word about what a roadway is. So yeah, so those are the weird, interesting things. So that is not moving forward right now, and what's sad is the site plan approval and the special permits we granted for that project, they're only good for 2 years.
Oh, cause yeah, it's been 3 years, I think.
They can ask for an extension. I'm talking to, well, they got an automatic extension because they were approved during COVID restrictions.
Yeah.
So they already have an extra year, I think it is. So, but I'm already talking to the applicant, Randy Waterman, about if he's gonna apply
Yeah.
for an
So
extension.
they've already got the property on the side of the Armsby Cemetery where the books,
Mhm.
children's, that's up for sale now again.
Yeah.
It's got a say for sale
Yeah,
sign,
because-
but my side does not.
Yeah, cause he's not a builder, so he has to partner with the builder. So that's what's stalling that whole project.
Yeah.
So we need the construction costs to come
You
down.
can stall as long as you want.
And, but the last guy we also told, we sat down with the fire department and he wanted to do, instead of doing as much pavement, he wanted to do kind of the roads that go behind units, do it as what's called grass pave. It's these special pavers, they can carry the weight, if they're installed correctly, carry the weight of a fire truck, but you plant it's gravel and you plant grass on top, so it looks like lawn, but you have the full access for fire trucks or whatever you need to. It brings the cost of the project down. Our fire chief said, those are fine, you can do that, just to try to bring the cost down and actually make it a prettier project. And we still haven't reached the spot where the numbers work for any builders, so. So
It's not a-
hopefully they'll renew the permits,
Yeah,
but
there's not a lot of property there with those two ponds.
no, but those can be the best center pieces of a lovely
Oh,
neighborhood.
yeah.
So we'll see, but great question.
Meanwhile, the beavers are taking care of the trees.
Gosh, the
Yes,
beavers
you can see the trees
everywhere.
look like this.
Beavers
Most of them are
ev-
down like that.
Yeah, I'm always worried, in sessions on climate change, I said, it needs to be climate change / beaver overpopulation, because beavers are causing just as
I
much.
mean, you know it's beavers that did it because of the way it's.
Yeah, we had
the
to
trees
punch a
look.
hole in a 21-foot high beaver dam, off Putnam Hill Road on DCR land, that contributed to that road washing out during that
Yeah.
flooding.
Oh.
21 feet high.
Oh, yeah.
Insane, they're such master builders, it's amazing. So, any other questions?
I appreciate, your filling me in
Sure.
because, I keep hearing that it's passed and they're gonna be doing it, and I saw the property was sold and nothing's happening. Even
No.
those trees still,
You can call me anytime, I'm happy to tell you what's up. You had a question?
Just an easy question. With the drought, we have some friends that are worried about their wells.
Mhm.
Does that cause any issues in the town?
Yeah.
Like private wells?
Private wells?
Yeah.
The Board of Health has complete purview over private wells. So I don't know if they're doing any investigations or they have any programs out there. I can tell you, I just saw a funding notice come across my desk, some new federal funding filtering down through the state, for private well maintenance and stuff. So, while I'm thinking of it, because my memory is so horrible, well, money. I'm gonna send that, make sure that gets over to the Board of Health, and I'll also ask them your question about if there's any programs or thoughts on drought effects on individual private wells. Obviously, the public water supply wellheads have state standards there where they watch those well levels all the time and have meters that, on paper, you'll see them go red when they're pumping over their well allotment or when water's dropping too low, but your individual wells, yeah, it's a whole different thing. Drought affects private wells. So I will pass your question on to the Board of Health and see what they say, and you can call my office and or their office for follow-up. I'm happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Same problem.
Yeah, we have a shallow well. My well's only 30 feet deep, so
I don't know how deep ours is. Everybody thinks, we've got a big white post there, and everybody thinks, oh, you gotta hang up your laundry. Cause it juts into the woods.
it's crazy.
It's on the back of our property, and then the well itself juts into the woods.
Interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
ours is in the wood, and I'm always like crossing my fingers. And every one of these 90-degree days, I'm like, oh, please tell me this is the day I don't turn on the spigot.
System we're running, and,
Yeah. Sorry, everything in our lawn. It's a brown lawn.
It's
in our
brown
house.
anyways, even with the sprinkler system.
The pond, I may have missed it in your explanation of other things. The pond that is near Woodburyville Heights.
Yep.
Sometimes it's empty and sometimes it's filled, and I've heard different
Yeah,
stories.
so here's the lowdown on that. So there was never a formal dam in that culvert under the road. It was literally probably, close to 100-year-old kind of Mickeyed boards.
Yeah.
Boards and cobbled together dam structure that was put in there a million years ago. Again, to dam up the stream and make it into a ponded area so they could cut ice from it, put it in the ice house and sell it. I am certain in the last 100 years, those boards have probably been repaired or replaced a few times, but never by the town, always by private parties or whoever. So there was never a formal dam structure in that culvert. It was just made by whoever and maintained by whoever. So it was during one of our larger weather events that the last of the holds on the degrading boards let loose. And the boards went out and all the water washed out and we saw the pond just disappear back into its old riverline area. Immediately, we called in the Office of Dam Safety, and the Conservation Commission was like, ah, and called out Office of Dam Safety and the Department of Environmental Protection. And they met our highway super out there and Conservation Commission reps out there to see what the deal was. And they saw what I just described to you, that there was clearly something that had been Mickeyed here. And then they went downstream to check damage and conditions downstream to see if there was any effect downstream. And there actually wasn't, shockingly enough. It came out slowly enough that it didn't damage anything downstream. You may or may not know that because of climate change, bless you, and environmental issues, the Office of Dam Safety and Department of Environmental Protection, they're actually trying to get rid of a bunch of dams. They're huge high maintenance costs, they can cause life safety events if they blow out during storms, any number of things. And Cold Spring Brook is technically a cold water fishery. I don't know the last time anybody's seen a trout in Cold Spring Brook, but cold water fisheries are ideal for trout. And there are other sections of the tributary that actually have brown trout in them. And so we have a local brown trout enthusiast, Glenn Kowalski, who's long been working with towns to try to eliminate unnecessary dams, to make sure there's not heating from runoff from pavements like the Unified project you see. You know, if water hits that, the pavement's hot, it runs off, it can work its way into the stream and be too hot for what lives in the stream. So part of stormwater management and review is making sure by the time it hits the river, it's the same temperature, or not a bad temperature. So he works on all kinds of stuff like that. So you had a whole group standing there that was thrilled that naturally the dam went away and now it could return to its natural condition, and a whole group of people were going, where's my beautiful pond? And the town's position, from the administration standpoint, is often just financial. Why would we put a dam back there that we have to maintain, we have to hire an engineer every 3 years to do a thing, and blah, 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 blah. You know, but of course there's a flip side of that. If you own property that previously abutted a pond, what's it gonna do to the value of your property? If you're no longer near a pond, but near a muck pool, that will eventually look like a nice little river again, but not for a while. So the town's position, last I knew, this is one of the things I'm not intimately involved in, was we are not building dam back in that spot. We're gonna let it do what it will, and what it will do through some magical means is every once in a while, a mattress or a board or something gets magically stuck in the culvert opening, and the pond fills back up again. And then it disappears. So that's the weirdness that's going on with that. So, and I don't know that will change anytime soon unless somebody goes to a selectmen's meeting and says, come on now, can we just have a plan? And I don't know what their motivation is to have a plan, you know, because there's two sides of that equation financially. You build a dam, which the state is not approving many of those, and maintain it for forever. What's the end goal of that? Or do you let it go back to its natural state, revegetate, and just blah, 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 which has been the focus of all the environmental agencies over the last 10, 15 years. So,
we enjoy it when it's there then.
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. But yeah, everybody's learning the history now of the ice pond. So, and look, we're finding the pictures of the old ice house that used to be across the street, and that's how things were done. More questions? Do you have any questions? Any questions back there?
No?
Any questions? Anything over there, Paul? No? Just keeping eyes on my Duval Road neighborhood. Awesome. Thank you so much. And anytime you want to call the office, have a chat, catch up on, see what the status of something is, please. But I'll try to strike a schedule with Michelle to come in, you know, no less than every 6 months anyways, and let you know what I know. So.
Well, it sounds like you have a very busy job.
Well, hey, let's not forget about the senior work-off program, because I welcome and love having senior work-off volunteers in my office. So if you ever are bored and you want to come hang with us and you know, help us do the mailings on the decisions, or roll over some.
Where is your office?
Up in the town hall, up on the 3rd floor. So there is an elevator. Come on up, and feel free to stop in. I'm happy to have guests in my office.
I thought of another question when
Yes.
you talked about the Shaw property and the different places where there are trails and benefit for our citizens. How do we
begged her to be here, I swear. So, we just finished doing our open space rec plan update, and one of the #1 goals in that open space rec plan was getting the information out there. There were 5 main goals, and one of the goals was our citizens will know about their open space and recreational assets and blah, blah, blah. So that's a goal we just started working on. So, Pam, our communications director behind you, and I are working together. We're coming up with a plan on basically what's the best way to get the information out to people. And we have it on our websites, and we're perfecting those pages. But a lot of people don't go on the computer, or they don't know to go on the computer, or where to go.
Town of Sutton.
It's under, see, here's the tricky thing. It's, right now it's under the planning board because I manage it all. But we have a separate rec page, but it's just about Marion's Camp because that's all the rec commission takes care of is Marion's Camp. So we need to complete some linkages between the recreation page and the planning page, and maybe even establish a separate page like public open spaces and parks. And then what we're also talking about doing is doing a mailing that is all about this, that is all about our public open spaces and stuff with links or QR codes. So you'll get little snippets, just the basic information about everything, but you'll have a link or you'll have a little QR code you can scan on your phone that'll take you for a deeper dive. So if you want to know more, if you want to get the maps of the trails or anything like that, you can do that by just going to those links. So that was one of the projects Pam and I have just finished talking about, that we'd like to get out that mailing. That would go to every household in town, so you at least have a place to start to know about these things.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, if you get antsy and you don't want to wait for that, you know, before I leave, you can just give me your address and I will mail you the Shaw Farm brochure, the Marion's Camp brochure. We have Tricentennial Park, which I don't want you to look at right now because it looks horrible. It's on the Blackstone River.
Yeah.
It's a mess because
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that because
it's
we
a huge
we had a
walkabout.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
with Wally
Okay.
and
She
Dick.
heard about our walkabout.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he left the walkabout and came to my office.
Yeah, because I wanted to know what
Yeah,
we
so
have discovered.
there's a park we installed during our last, was it 400-year anniversary? Was our last one? 300-year anniversary? With a big monument there, and you may or may not know, they just replaced the Blackstone Street Bridge, which is right next to the
Yeah,
park.
the bridge is nice.
So when they were working on the bridge, we did no maintenance to the park because they had all their construction equipment on it, their parking lot, we did nothing. So when they were done, the highway department went back in there and did their once through with their weed whacking, their weed clearing, and stuff like that. And the problem is, that was another grant I applied for a million years ago. One of those maintenance, the thing that makes you think of maintenance. That grant was weird though. I applied for $250,000 to have them build that grant. I applied for the money, but Mass DOT was the one that got to do the design plans and hire the contractor. Mass Department of Transportation is awesome at building roadways. They're not awesome at building grassy parks next door. So all of the pathways and stuff have just enough slope so that when it rains, they all wash out, but not, they can't put in pavement that close to the river. It won't be approved by the Conservation Commission. So they said, oh, we'll just put stone dust. And then they put, instead of doing them flat, because they're like, oh, we have to have a little slope for drainage, they made them just the right slope that all the stone dust washes. And so they're either washed out or there's enough weeds growing up through them to just choke anybody. It's horrible. So basically, we stopped spending maintenance money on it, and I got an appropriation in May, and I'm getting ready to go out to contract night now to replace all the stone dust trails with pervious paving, basically. So it'll look like macadam, but it has big rocks in it, so the water can percolate through it. And you can do that next, and then we can clean everything up. We have to redo the rain garden that's in there. We're removing all the dilapidated fencing, everything. But in the meantime, we didn't want to throw good money after bad.
No, I
So,
just wanted.
The highway department was there at the speed of light mowing it
Yeah,
after
yeah.
that, just to knock down the weeds, but you won't see major improvements probably until the fall.
Well, anything would be better
Yeah,
than what it was.
in the fall, and of course, the contracts have to come in price, cause you get a quote, and Lord only, the quote I got 3 months ago, in time for town meeting
Yeah,
warrant
good
articles,
luck.
so now I gotta put it out to bid at prevailing wage, cause it's a town job, and we'll see. If it comes in under bid, we'll have some nice walkways in there that are easily maintained, and I already told the, highway super that, because my dad raised me on gardening and pruning and the like, and was a highway super himself for 30 years, that I will personally go in and prune everything out and make sure it's all set, instead of paying a really expensive landscape firm to do that. It's not a very big area, it's not a big deal. So yeah, so that's
No, it's
why,
just, it
that's
was
why it looks
horrible.
horrible, but it's, one of the things I'm doing, like I said, is I maintain that, and I got that money from town meeting, and I just gotta find some time to put it out to bid, and then it'll be really nice
Okay.
again. So,
As long
and
as you're
P.S.,
working on it.
while you're thinking about that neighborhood, the other project I'm working on right now with the highway super is we're replacing the Depot Street Bridge too. So I'm working
Yeah, I know.
to do, we need a whole bunch of easements and gotta get some appraisals, and then that bridge will be as big and beautiful and sidewalks and lovely. Cause those were two of the bridges that blew out with about 1 million other in Massachusetts during the 38, or 37 or 38 hurricane. And they couldn't produce enough steel fast enough, so tons of bridges got substandard spans, and those were two of them, so.
No, what they did with the bridge is beautiful.
Gorgeous, right?
Gorgeous.
Yeah, so, and
But
we
what
are,
they did
we,
with the park is
horrible,
neglected.
it's horrible, it's horrible, and I know it, and we're fixing it, and we're still working, to finish the Blackstone River Bikeway too, which will run on the other
Oh, yeah.
side of the bridge. So we have segments 3, 4, and 5 are all that's left, and then you'll be able to go from Rhode Island all the way to Worcester, on the bikeway, if we can get it finished, so.
We can get it by then.
Yeah, I'm gonna try. It's a huge, McGovern, our legislator, it's a huge project he wants done, and he's been pushing, but we'll see. So, it's a tough one, cause
Well,
those.
it's a shame that Massachusetts couldn't do it, because Rhode Island did a
Rhode
great job.
Island is amazing, amazing. They're really, really great, and for a long time, we had a planner who lives in Rhode Island, working up here in the valley, and, she really made some progress. She was the heart between the section in Millbury that got done, and the section in Uxbridge that got done. And then she went back to Rhode Island to work for their Department of Environmental Management. She's a good friend of mine, I beat her up on it all the time. So yeah, but those three segments are they're the hardest ones. They're right against the river, huge bridge issues, huge environmental issues. There's a reason why those ones aren't done, so those will be big, big dollars, so, but we're gonna keep pushing. We only have a mile in Sutton, just,
Right.
come on. Yeah. So at least give us the mile, so, but, all right, anything else?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.